Welcome to Kickass TV. This is Kickass Forever Monthly with my good friend John Erigo, the CEO of Kickass Forever. And John, it's been about 2 months because you and I have been super busy with things, and but we weren't going to let another month go by without doing this. And today, since you and I are mutual Kiss fans, we thought it'd be fun to talk about the 40th anniversary of this album, Lick It Up. Now, let me ask you, John, as a Kiss fan, go back in your time machine to 1983, and let's talk about not even hearing the music or the album, but what was your first impression? Let me ask you, as far as seeing Kiss Unmasked, did you see it initially when the album on the album cover when the album was released, or did you see the MTV unmasking?
No, I remember being with my friend Ed Hillel. I was at the time living with his family. My family had just relocated from Long Island to Connecticut, and I decided to stay in New York. And I remember being in his basement because they had announced that Kiss was going to be, on, and we watched it as the first time that it aired.
Yeah.
And I just remember them doing one guy at a time, like they'd show you the picture of their face with the makeup, and then it would fade out, and then it would be them without the makeup. And I think the biggest reaction was Gene. We were like, "Whoa, look at Gene! Gene looks like he looked totally different." And we didn't know. You got to remember there was no internet back then.
Sure, yeah.
So we didn't know that they were going to play the "Lick It Up" video. We didn't even hear the song yet.
Yeah.
And they played it. We were all excited, and it was because Ed was a huge Kiss fan. He still is. So yeah, it was it was shocking for sure.
Yeah.
But it kicked off a whole new era. Gave them a whole new life. It was a great album. I love "Lick It Up." I remember the tour too. The tour was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was definitely a revitalization that they kind of needed, which I thought was unfortunate because the album before was Creatures, which was just a monster metal album, and it just did nothing.
It's amazing. They recently came out with the 40th anniversary box set of that, and they had two versions. They had a deluxe version, which is a little more costly, like about $300 and something, and then they have a cheaper version, kind of stripped down version, but you still get some extra tracks and stuff, which is pretty cool. And what's interesting, I bring that up because since they came out with the box set, it seems like that the album, it's been the numbers have been going up, obviously, and it's selling a lot more copies than what it did back in 1982.
Yeah, both albums deserve to be held in high regard with Kiss fans because they're both. I always said that Kiss was at their best when they were at playing more towards metal.
Yeah.
I thought before Dynasty and then after Unmasked, that those three albums, I always tell you, the trilogy of shit, I call it.
Yeah. A lot of people consider Love Gun the last kind of real Kiss album for the simple fact it's the last studio that really features the original four.
Yeah, and even some songs on that album, I don't think all four of them played on. But yeah, you think about even though those an album like Hotter Than Hell, even though sonically it's garbage. I mean, it sounds like it was recorded in a trash can. But you listen to those songs, and especially when they play a song like Parasite. When they play Parasite live, it's heavy. That's a heavy song.
I love the first two albums, and it's amazing. Hotter Than Hell. I mean, I always love the album cover. I love the songs on there sonically. It seems like those first two albums are really kind of a lot more raw. That's kind of Kiss in their infancy, their early age, are kind of developing their sound. A lot. I don't know why Hotter Than Hell, didn't receive. Wasn't bigger. I mean, besides the title track, I love those songs like Coming Home. Strange Ways, interestingly enough, Peter Criss sings it, but as we know, back in the early days, Kiss Ace was not a confident lead singer at the time, but he wrote a lot of heavy songs like Strange Ways.
I always like Mainline, another obscure hidden track.
Now Mainline, that is I love that track. I've always loved that track. Yeah. Another Peter Criss song, and what's interesting is from what I've heard, and I had no idea at the time when I first heard this song when I was much younger, but apparently that's, if you listen to the lyrics, and it's interesting because I don't know if Peter Criss wrote the lyrics, but apparently it's a song about his so-called love affair with cocaine. And yet Gene and Paul, I don't think had any clue of that either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the first time I heard that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. And, getting back to Lick It Up, so how did you like the idea of Kiss taking their makeup? I mean, as a fan, I remember it was kind of exciting for the simple fact, okay, now we're gonna get to see what these guys look like. But Stanley, okay, kind of looks like what I envision. Now Eric Carr, let's talk about Eric Carr and Vinnie Vince, because even though Eric had been in the band for a few years, this is what many people consider like his not really his first album, because I'd say Creatures of a Night or even The Elder was his first album, but probably sonically this is the most solid Kiss album that he had been on at the time, other than maybe Creatures.
Yeah, there were some songs on The Elder he didn't play on because the producers didn't
Sure.
like the way that he was playing. I think one of the songs was I, which he actually played live on that Friday show.
Yeah.
When they had the Elder outfits. But as far as like how did I feel with them dropping the makeup and stuff, and I've told you we've talked about Kiss a lot, you and I,
Yeah.
here on these videos. And I always stress that with me, it's all about the music.
Yeah.
And if they got makeup, they don't have makeup, whatever. I'm about listening to them because, like, when you're at home, the only time you're enjoying the makeup and stuff really is when you're seeing them live. So
Sure.
if you're not seeing them live and you got them in your ear, I want them to sound good. So I was all open to it, and I just remember the first time listening to the album again with my friend Ed Hillel, and I think the track that got us was "Fits Like a Glove."
Yeah. Great
And you
Gene
hear
track.
Gene doing that guttural kind of growl in it,
Yeah.
and we were just like, "What is going on? This is so heavy." And the reason that I think that they were like that was it's all about Eric, because a band is only as good as its drummer. The drummer's the engine that drives the car. Uh, no pun intended. I just kind of came out like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had so much energy, especially like I don't know if you've seen videos
Sure.
from like the non-makeup era,
Yeah.
and you listen to how fast like some of those songs are, like Love Gun or Detroit Rock City. It's like light speed fast, and that's just the way he was. He was energy, and he made the band sound so much heavier, and I loved it.
Yeah.
When I first heard Lick It Up, at first listen, I was like, yeah, I'll take more of this any day. This is great. And then, of course, the big question was, well, okay, so the makeup's gone, the costumes are gone. What's it going to be like live?
Yeah.
And I think what most people didn't realize was the shape, physical shape that Gene and Paul were in, like cardio wise.
Yeah.
And again, you go back and watch those videos. Now, Paul's not wearing, they're not wearing the heels. Gene was wearing like boots with, like a small heel. But Paul was wearing like white on white Nike sneakers. And it was just like watching, it was like watching an aerobics event. Him and Gene were like nonstop, literally. I mean, jumping and jump kicks and going up around the drums on the ramps. It was unbelievable. And they were singing. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, well, John, even as a performer yourself, think about this. Taking off the makeup, so they don't have they weren't anymore in those heavy armor costumes. So just think about all the weight that they weren't wearing any longer, and a lot more freedom, as you're saying, to jump around and do whatever. And I've heard Paul Stanley talk over years. He very much felt like, okay, he wanted to prove to everybody that the makeup was not just a gimmick. In other words, that like kind of like you're saying, we can make records. We don't need the makeup to make records. I mean, it's a.
I think the saying was the makeup never wrote a song.
Yeah.
I think that's what Paul and Gene, that's the line that they used to use when they were asked that question. But it's funny too, because like if you watch, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Essex, is it Essex, Germany? Something that there's video from the very first show they did without makeup. And I think they started purposely overseas because they weren't sure how it was gonna how it was gonna work out in front of a crowd. I mean, they play without makeup, all the time in band practice,
Yeah, sure.
But now they're doing it in front of an audience for the first time. So I think they did a couple of maybe months, I'm gonna say, over in Europe to kind of like get the feel for it. Because Gene was still acting like he had the outfit on. If you watch, he's like hunched over and his
Yeah,
tongue's out. And
yeah,
I think there was some kind of goofy bet that him and Paul had about how long it would take him to stick his tongue out
yeah.
because he wasn't in makeup anymore, but he was still spitting the fire,
Sure,
you
sure.
know. So it was just like a feeling out kind of process. I think they did,
Yeah,
and excuse me,
sure.
and the biggest complaint on the Creatures tour, I didn't unfortunately get to see it because it got canceled before it
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
my
yeah. See,
show.
yeah,
The biggest complaint was Vinny not playing like Ace,
yeah, yeah,
and I don't know how you expect a guy that plays like that to play like Ace, you
yeah,
know. But Vinny really, I think, came into his own on the Lick It Up tour. I mean, if you listen to like in the box set that you had
yeah,
held up when we talked about Creatures,
yeah,
if you listen to the live stuff, from that, you can hear Vinny sounds kind of like he doesn't really know the songs,
yeah,
that great. You fast forward to the Lick It Up tour, and he sounded much more like comfortable in the band,
yeah,
to me
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. And even talking about the Lick It Up album cover, I've heard the guys talk over years that they had like two different album covers, one with makeup and one without. And I think you've probably even seen the one with makeup pop up
Yeah,
online. Uh, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But anyways, um, so they just kind of decided one day, hey, let's shoot a cover without us wearing makeup just to see what it looks like. And
yeah.
so
I've
that
seen I've seen alternate pictures of what was the cover,
yeah,
like them wearing those same clothes, but I've never
yeah,
saw a makeup cover for
maybe
that
that's what I've
album.
seen because I've seen stuff pop up online where it's the exact same clothes they're in, but I don't know if it's been touched up or if that's what it originally looked like, but that's what I'm talking about. And Vinnie Vincent is a very interesting cat because um, for years people thought really didn't know who played guitar on Creatures, but they wanted us to think it was Ace at the time. They wanted us to think it was that lineup of band. That's why, interestingly enough, he appears on the cover of the album. And back in 1985, they did a reissue where I don't really know why, except for that was the lineup at the time. They decided, oh, what we're going to do a new cover of Kiss out of makeup with Bruce as the current guitar player. And there was rumor that Bob Killick played on some of the Creatures album. I don't know if that's true, but I never understood that. But then they went back to like the album. Now you can get it with the original cover, which I think is cool because that's the cover we all originally
Yeah.
knew and loved. But so even though Vinny plays a lot on Creatures, he's more of a studio musician on that, and they were kind of auditioning him and some other guys, and I guess they ultimately went with him.
Yeah, Vinny was an incredibly talented player. I mean, I got to, see Kiss a couple of times on the Lick It Up tour, and he was so fast and clean. He was a real like shredding
Yeah,
kind of guitar player, which was like weird because you were so used to hearing, Ace doing his like Jimmy Page kind of stuff, and now you're jumping to more like a Van Halen kind of player. So it was definitely a different dynamic for
and I
sure.
think at that time that's what they wanted because even after Vinny was no longer the band, they got Mark St. John, which was a similar type of player
Yeah.
because that's what they were looking. They were looking for a guy that could.
Well, I think the whole thing with that is they were just trying to keep up with the times
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Gene and Paul are not fans of that kind of playing. That's not what they like. They like the classic kind of good old, rock and roll kind of guitar player, blues based,
Yeah,
you know, um, and I think a lot of the '80s, Animalize, um, Asylum, those kind of albums. If you look at what they looked like
yeah.
and what they sounded like, and they were like following the trends instead of trying to
Did a,
set them like they
yeah, yeah,
had.
exactly.
And I think they kind of got lost in that, like trying to look like Poison instead of looking like Kiss.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, some of those outfits that Paul was wearing on the Asylum, even Gene, it was just like, what are
I
you
will
guys
say though,
doing?
I think
You know?
Paul was much more comfortable without the makeup than Gene. It took him a lot longer to
Yeah,
kind of.
because Gene was like I think in the early days, like a really early days, like the first three albums, you watch those live clips.
Yeah.
It's almost like Gene's in a movie.
Well, even look it up. Look how different he looks here. I mean, no longer wearing
Yeah,
the hair
right.
in a bun, and
Yeah,
and just kind of, it's like, wow, that's a different look for him. I
yeah,
think they're all trying to find their look, and the thing is with Vinny is there's no denying talented songwriter, talented guitar player, and I think at the time they wanted that, but also what they didn't realize at the time is he was a guy that could not be controlled, and that was the problem.
right.
Being in
And
a band.
I saw it firsthand the night that he got himself fired from the band when they were playing Radio City Music Hall in New York, which for them was a small place.
Yeah.
I don't even think it holds 5,000, and they played
Wow.
2 nights in a row with Accept was opening.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure it was the second night that there was a part in the show where Paul was trying to talk to the crowd, and Vinny just wouldn't stop playing
Yeah.
in between songs. And Paul walked up to him, punched him in the arm, and shouted, "Stop!"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know. And supposedly, and then when they left the stage for the encores, like they came back on stage, and I remember Paul saying, "Where's the disappearing Ank?"
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Like Vinny had he was backstage ranting and raving about how he's quitting the band, and eventually he got fired from that incident. I think that was like the last straw.
Well,
Even
it
though
was
the
that,
tour
and
went on
ultimately he
after
got
that.
fired because he constantly refused. I guess everybody since Ace and Peter have left, everybody was coming out with band since had to sign some kind of contract, and he ultimately, I guess, was holding out for more money, so he refused to sign the
Yeah,
contract, thinking if I just don't sign it, there's nothing they can
yeah,
do.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but he found out, and
Nice try, buddy.
I will say though, "Lick It Up" as an album. Vinnie Vincent is all over, not just guitar wise, but songwriting wise, and um,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I think
he was a great songwriter too.
and Gene and Paul, they're some pretty good songwriters themselves. I mean, that's how you have a 50-year career. But I don't think they wanted a guy like Vinnie Vincent, as talented as he was, coming in and outshining them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I mean, well, they did bring him back for Revenge too, to add some of the heaviness there.
Yeah, it
Um,
worked. Yeah.
but yeah, Vinny was one of those guys. You hear about it all the time in the music business. He was his own worst enemy. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
if he would,
I interviewed Carmine a piece a couple times, and he was telling me the story about that he actually had a band called Carmine and the Rockers or something like that, and and they wrote some tracks together, and they were put an album out. But I guess after Vinny had gone and Kiss and this and that, he was making it difficult for Carmine to release the album. Carmine's like, it's just it's more of a headache than anything. So the stuff just never got released because Vinny was making it difficult. Because I guess they all
it
wrote the
seems to
songs
follow him.
together, and
Yeah,
Vinny
that
wanted
seems.
to have the sole songwriting credit. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to follow Vinny wherever he goes. Like I said, his own worst enemy. You shut up, play ball.
Yeah.
You got a chance to be in a band like Kiss.
And I will say, he really is his
Yes,
worst
Mr.
enemy.
Stanley.
Yeah, because I think he's a very talented guy, but it's a real shame because he's coming out supposedly. We'll see if it ever gets. But he's been
Oh
talking
yeah,
the
with
last couple
this,
of months.
yeah.
He's going to come out with this album called Judgment Day, and he's not totally being honest. From what I understand, it's this album that he's been sitting on for that he recorded with Robert Fleischman. It was originally called Guitars from Hell, Guitar Mandolin, or something like that. And now he's
Guitar-mageddon.
changing the album title so people think it's a new album. But
Oh,
I even interviewed the drummer that played on that, Andre Lebre, and he was telling me, I love Benny. He was a super super nice guy, but he's like, I had to leave because he's like, he didn't want me to do interviews talking about the album or anything or do any press. He wanted us to all sign a contract, restricting us from doing all kinds of things. He said it was just crazy. And if I signed the contract, there's no way I was going to make any kind of money. So I got to make a living.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And so it's a shame, but and at the end of the day, I think Eric's drumming too. Like you said, a lot of people at first, Eric joins around 1980, and they're touring Australia and all that behind Unmasked, and a lot of people don't even realize they maybe thought that he played on the album, even though Peter Criss was Peter Chris again doesn't play on the album, but his face is all over the cover. Eric tours behind that. Then they do the Elder, and then they don't even tour behind. So by the time Lick It Up comes out, it's really kind of like Kiss's comeback, not just to America, but around the world, and so people were really looking at this to see what it sounded like, and it was an all new sound, and I think it was exciting, and that's why, like, if you look at the song Young and Wasted, Eric does not sing the song on the album cover, but yet it became one of his staples, one of the songs that he would get to sing live in concert.
Yeah, the concert. Yeah.
And in
Yeah,
fact,
I
if you
love
go
that
and look
song
at the
too.
Animal live Uncensored, that's where that all started.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always liked that song. That song was a fun song live too.
And it
To
was
watch
interesting.
them
Paul
play.
Paul does a kick-ass job on the album, but I think I always loved seeing Eric do that live because I don't know, he just, even vocally, he just gave it a kick in the ass,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was cool when they unleashed Eric.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And even vocally when he'd play live with the band, he'd do stuff like Black Diamond. So I thought it
yeah.
was cool to have another guy in the band that could do some vocals.
Yeah, Eric was a really nice guy. I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of times.
Oh, what was
Just
that
by
like? Yeah.
um it was oh geez. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was when Asylum was out.
Yeah, 85
Yeah.
around there, 86.
And
Yeah.
I'm in Lemoore East in Queens, big club.
Yeah.
And who was playing? Lita Ford was playing that night.
Oh,
And
wow.
it might even have been Eric Singer drumming with her at that time. I don't know.
Probably so. Yeah. Or Randy
Um,
Castillo or somebody like that. Yeah.
I think Randy had moved on. He might have been with Ozzy already.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why I think it was Eric's. Anyway, so I'm like hanging out in the club, and these two friends of mine come up, and they're like, "Dude, Eric Carr's here." I'm like, "Really?" Because he used to go to since he lived in that area, he used to go to the rock clubs every once in a while just
Wow.
by himself.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm like, "Oh, cool," and they're like, well, I'm like, "Where is he?" They're like, "Oh, he's hanging out at the bar." I was like, "Okay, great." So they drag me over there, and he's sitting there talking to some girl, and she doesn't believe that he's Eric Carr.
Again, because he's out of makeup, right? I know he
I mean,
wears makeup.
how could you not know it's him with that hair,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it just so happens that at the time me and my friends walked up, they were playing a video, and he goes, "Look, look, look!" He's like a little kid. He's like, "Look, look,
Yeah.
that's me on the drums." It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
and
They always.
so I turn to my friends and I'm like, "Okay, cool, great," and I turn around and they stop me like, "No, no, 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 no! You're the biggest Kiss fan. You got to talk to him." I'm like, "Oh, come on! He's hanging out talking to a girl, man."
Yeah.
You know. So they kind of push me up against the bar next to him, and when he's done talking, I started talking to her. We hit a, it was at a
Yeah.
little 10-minute conversation. And at the time, there was still Kick-Ass Monthly going. And I
Sure. Sure.
mentioned it to him. And he actually gave me his business card.
Wow.
And he was interested in doing something. And I called a few times and I never got answered back. So,
Wow.
but I still have every once in a while it comes up in my Facebook memories and I post it with some like Street Gang Productions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember and the logo had like glitter on the business card. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was a really nice. I ran into him once or twice after that same kind of situation, just hanging out in a rock club.
I heard that's the card he was using to try to get the rock the rock the
The
little cartoon thing.
cartoon, the rock
Yeah,
tunes.
rock tunes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that was his production
Rockheads. That's what
company.
it. Rockheads. Yeah,
Rockheads. Yeah, that was his production company. I think Street
yeah.
Gang Productions.
And I bet you're so
Yeah.
glad that your friends kind of pushed you to go and talk to him now, huh?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I just didn't want to bother the guy. I figured,
Sure,
he's
sure.
out. Everybody's gonna be, like busting his chops and stuff.
But
But he
I
was
always
very
heard that.
cool.
I've always heard stories like that where I've heard even Bruce talk in interviews that he goes, we play a show, we come off stage, we go backstage and hang out with the fans for a little bit. He says Eric was always the last one back at the hotel. He'd hang out with the fans even when he got to the hotel, like down in the main lobby till like 1 or 2 in the morning. We'd be
Yeah,
Eric, come on, you gotta get some, you gotta get some rest.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy. He was very, very cool. Very cool.
And
And
again, Eric Carr doesn't really get the credit he deserves, I feel, so often. I mean, and even you look on this album, one of the favorite, it was released as a single. My favorite tracks off of this album, All Hell's Breaking Loose. And interestingly enough, they're all credited with writing on, but Eric was the main writer on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's the one that came up with the idea to do a kind of like a rock rap song.
What people don't realize, even though Eric was a drummer in Kiss, apparently he could play many different instruments. Besides singing, he could play bass, he could play guitar. I've understood from Bruce, like some of the tracks that him and Bruce they would demo together. Eric would play the bass or the guitar. I think on Creatures of the Night on "I Still Love You," it's actually Eric that plays the bass, not Gene.
I heard it was Paul, but who knows?
Who knows? I mean, there's different stories going around right there.
I know that I think Eric in I think was there a song there's a song on I'm trying to remember which album is maybe Crazy Nights that he plays bass on. There's a song somewhere in that 80s era where he played a bass on a couple of songs. I know Bruce did too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, Eric, when they unleashed him, he was awesome. And the stuff on Lick It Up, which is the album, that they're trying to focus on here. Yeah, man. I mean, he was incredible. He drove them over the top, and I loved it. I was like, okay, this
And
guy's
I think they knew how talented he was, and they were willing to unleash him a little, but they didn't want they didn't want him overshadowing them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
of course.
yeah, and in fact, the song that people remember him singing lead on, of course, off of "Hot in the Shade," "Little Caesar."
Mhm.
I guess they recorded a couple different versions of that. There's a version on the box set that they
Yeah.
kind of changed the title and the words. It was called "Ain't That Peculiar," but you can tell it's
Yep.
the same song that more kind of morphed into "Little Caesar."
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that definitely.
Yeah. And another thing about "Lick It Up" is, another one of my favorite tracks. I never understood like why it wasn't like more of a rock anthem, why they wasn't a bigger hit. Is and on the eighth day. I just love that song. You know,
Yeah, I don't think they ever played that one live.
I don't understand. I mean, it could have been like a big rock anthem, I think, and who knows why, but another interesting thing, another great track off of this is "Not for the Innocent." Now, if you got the Creatures box set, or you can even go to YouTube because they got some of those demos up. They got an interesting version where I think it's a demo version, or they recorded two different versions. And when they record Creatures was released, they went with the Paul vocal, but they have a track that you can. It's one of the extra tracks on the Creatures box set. It's a demo version of "Not for the Innocent" with Gene and Paul trading off on lead vocals. I think it would have been much better if they'd kept that version, but I don't know why. Yeah,
Yeah, it was always throughout the history of Kiss. Those songs are always usually like really fun to listen to when they go back and forth.
yeah,
It would have been cool if they would have left it.
yeah.
But I always laugh at the story about the song "Exciter," which is another great song on that
Oh,
album.
I'm glad you brought that up because apparently the guy that plays the solo on that is not Vinny, but Rick Derringer, even
Yeah.
though it's a Vinny song. Yeah,
And the great thing about it is the story is that Vinny didn't know it until the album was already like mixed and mastered,
and then you could
and they
hear that
went
it
back
wasn't.
to listen
Yeah,
to it, and he's like, "That's not me."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was all because that he was complaining a lot that the solo was too short, and he was lobbying to have them extend the solo break in that song, and so they let him. They said, "Okay, go ahead, play what you want to play." And then after he left, they erased it, and they brought in Rick Derringer, and
And
oh
what
man,
what is very interesting is regarding Vinny as a song, very talented songwriter. I mean, I've heard
oh yeah,
as a Kiss fan, I got a lot of bootleg stuff, demos and stuff he's recorded, just
hmm
great songwriting stuff. He did he wrote this song that Peter Criss originally put on "Let Me Rock You," "Tears." John Waite did a version of that, but Vinny's one of the writers, and he did. If you go to on YouTube, you just type in Vinny Vincent "Tears." He does a great version of that. Um, and it's interesting because I like between the two Vinny Vincent albums, I do like the first one best. I mean, I like his chemistry with Robert Fleischman, and but yeah, the problem they have when the band tried to play live, it was all about Vinny instead of the
oh
fact that you have a great band. Let's
yeah,
let's make it a shred fest, and okay, I get that's what he does, but I think he would have been more successful if it's kind of like, Ozzy goes solo and he gets a great backing band, and you highlight all the players in the band, not just make it about you. Yeah.
Yeah, my problem with the Vinnie Vincent invasion was those ultra high pitched vocals. I'm just not a fan of that. It was a little overkill. I thought the whole production was a little too. I guess the term the
Yeah.
musical term is tinny. It's
Yeah.
too much high end, and there was like no balls, no bass at all to it. Now, I actually got to see them play live.
Wow.
And I'm gonna tell you that I never felt so bad for a singer before in my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
because poor Mark Slaughter is standing there trying to like put on a show, and the song goes, verse,
Yeah.
chorus, guitar solo, extended guitar solo.
Yeah.
I go back to the chorus, and then there's another extended guitar solo at the end of the song, and I mean extended, like not like a couple of measures, like a couple of minutes, and it was just like the term that I like to use is guitar diarrhea. It was just
Yeah. I mean,
all,
again,
all speed
what,
and no direction, and it was just like, and Mark Slaughter is standing there like trying to look interested. He's trying to like play with the crowd and stuff, but I felt bad for the guy because every song was like. Then in between songs he was playing, it was insanity,
yeah,
and the wig was just ridiculous at that
yeah,
point
yeah.
too.
And I get that, it's Vinnie Vincent's solo project. He's a so-called frontman, the center of the band. But at the same time, like you look, had a very talented drummer like Bobby Rock. But yeah, it was all about being a guitar shred fest. And like you're saying, it's very interesting because even Dana Strum, who produced all the stuff, and he was very much involved with the writing. That's the thing. Mark Slaughter comes in, and even though he's a singer, these are all Vinnie Vincent songs. And I think Dana was a co-writer, co-producer, and even as great of a producer as Dana is, which I could never, as a fan, kind of figure out is that it's very interesting because I even the album that Mark did, I wasn't a huge fan of that. I love the Slaughter stuff much better. I mean, it's more commercial, it's more radio friendly, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, they just had hit after hit. I think part of the reason for that is when they formed Slaughter, Mark and Dana are able to write the songs the way they want, perform the songs the way they want, as opposed to being told how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, song-wise, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion stuff wasn't bad. It
Yeah.
was just the execution of the songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, with the vocals like that, and even the overall tone of the albums being so, high end, kind of,
Yeah.
sonically, it just didn't do it. I mean, and the songs were good, but it was overshadowed by so much other stuff going on that took away from them. I think if they would have just went with a straight kind of production,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like toned down the vocals a little bit, I think that band would have been, together a much longer than 2 albums.
And if you ever heard of any of those unreleased demos I was talking about that Vinny recorded over the years,
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like,
he's singing on them, which I never understood. Okay, Vinny Vincent, why don't you just, if you've got the ability to sing like that, why not? A lot of the stuff was melodic, but again, I think he wanted to make it a shred fest, and some of those demos are quite good because he's singing on them. You even listen to a song off the first Vinnie Vincent Invasion album, Back on the Streets. That's kind of a duet he's doing with Robert Fleischman. It's not half bad. Yeah. They would have done more stuff
I
like
remember
that.
I remember hearing, I think he was in a band called Warrior.
Yeah. They recorded some of these songs. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that stuff was pretty good, and I know, like on the Eighth Day and Not for the Innocent, I think came from those pre-Kiss Vinny bands when he had that really bad mustache.
Yeah, and Jimmy, yeah. I'll tell you,
Like
there's this thing that he did with Felix Caballero called Treasure. You can find it. It pops up on YouTube.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Great stuff. Is like got this song called Innocent Eyes, Jubilation, just great pop stuff.
No, it's almost it's similar, not in sound, but it's similar to Bruce Kulick having that band with Michael Bolton called Blackjack.
Yeah.
Like good commercial AOR kind of rock.
Sure.
And Bruce had a bad mustache too.
Yeah. Well, John, I can't believe we're about ready to run out of time. So before we get cut off, we're going to say goodbye. But thanks for doing this, man. If I don't talk to you before, I'm gonna go on a 3-week vacation. When I come back, we'll do the next episode before Christmas. But I was gonna say, have a happy rest of Thanksgiving and holidays and that,
Thanks, you
and
too, man.
we'll be doing the next episode in December, and this is 40 years old. Can you believe that?
Yeah, don't forget, Kiss's last show from Madison Square Garden is going to be on pay-per-view. So
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that next time. Take care, John. Bye bye.
you too, Jay. Always fun, man. Thanks.
Yeah.